Being compliant is just straightforward. Being maliciously compliant? Well, that's another story. Welcome to this episode of Malicious Compliance. Our first one is from Citizen Vince. I work at a casino as a dealer. We have a first in, first out way of scheduling dealers. So if you start at 7 p.m., you get to leave before people that started at 8 p.m. when they're able to close the tables down and send you home. Pretty normal and straightforward. If more than one person starts at the same time, then who gets the option to leave first is assigned on a rotating basis. So if you have the first option one week, you will be second the following, the third after that, then back to one. So one afternoon I was reporting to work with two other dealers, all set to start at the same time. I was looking forward to a short evening as I was the first option and I had plans after work. I arrived 10 minutes before my shift and noticed one of the dealers who was starting at my start time was already dealing. They, the dealer, must have been in the EDR and the pencil needed a dealer to start right away. I confirmed that they had started 15 minutes before their scheduled time, and they were the third option. Fast forward 6 hours, and we had tables we could start closing. I'm stoked to get out of there, when I look over and see the dealer that started early leaving before me. I pointed out that I was supposed to be leaving before her, and she gave me a shit-eating grin and said, "Well, I started before you, so I have the first option." And then she just walked off all smug. I was super pissed and said something to the supervisor. He shrugged me off and said, "It's policy." First to start leaves first? Okay, game on. I knew this coworker had kids and had to wait for her mom to come over to babysit before she could leave for work, so she wasn't always early for her shift. I have no kids or obligations, so I started showing up 2 hours before my shift and just chilling in the EDR. I would let the supervisor know I was there in case they needed me to start early, which they always did, because they would not refuse to open a table for lack of staff, knowing I was on property and available to work. 3 weeks of this, and I had held the first option on every shift I worked. The dealer who was all smug about starting early was getting frustrated and angry at me. Having to stay super late every night was wearing her down. "It would be nice to get off before close just once," she said to me once as I was leaving early yet again. I told her I was just following policy, and that she was welcome to show up early to make sure she was always first out. 2 more weeks and many complaints to the boss later, the policy was changed. Now, in order to jump option numbers, you would have to be called in over an hour before your scheduled time. 15 minutes wasn't going to cut it anymore if you wanted to leave early. I hope that it was worth it for her staying until near close for over a month over that 15 minutes. I am petty and I have a lot of free time. Edit, to answer some questions I'm seeing and give some clarification. Yes, I showed up 2 hours early for my shift. However, I was paid for nearly all of that extra time, as I was always asked to start work early since I was on the property and available. I actually worked more hours and made more money during this time than I had previously. The difference in time leaving work was several hours. First option usually leaves around 9 p.m. to 10 p.m., while second and third options leave around 2 to 3 a.m., depending on business. My property is KYO, so the volume of hours is less important to us. Not really an excuse, but this coworker is not easy to get along with. She has had run-ins with just about every other dealer at some point. She's the type to quote policy when it works in her favor, and disparage the same policy the second it works against her. If she had something important to do the evening in question, or needed to leave because of childcare or whatever, I would have happily passed my option to her. My plans were not as important as something like childcare. It was the underhanded way she went about getting herself out early, combined with her snarky remark and shit-eating grin, that made me want to get revenge. We do not use an EO list because it actually created similar issues. People would come by several hours before their shift to sign in, go home, then come back. People got upset, so management said you can't sign the EO more than 1 hour before your shift started. So nearly the entire crew would be an hour early and bicker over it. Then it was changed to, you can't sign the EO until you're clocked in at your scheduled time and enter the pit. This resulted in people showing up an hour early and camping out in line near the time clock like it was Black Friday. So yeah, no more EO list. I feel like this is malicious compliance because she was very eager to point out to me that the option number shifting was policy, and the supervisor said she was correct. I was just following the policy as she did, just to a more severe degree. Like, I support the OP 100%. I agree, the Karen could have easily said they had something they needed to take care of, whatever, but being a snob about it and acting all high and mighty, what do you expect? You can't act like that and expect people to work with you. Absolutely beautiful malicious compliance. And our final one is by Icy Computer Poop. I used to work in a hotel as a porter. We had to wear white shirts and black pants, and they provided us with a uniform, which was just a nondescript black vest. I worked there part-time, but also had another part-time job at the post office. I told them about the second job before they hired me. They asked me what I'd do about conflicting shifts, and I said I'd work for whichever company booked my time first. So if the post office said they wanted me next week on Wednesday to Saturday, and then later the hotel asked me to work that time, I'd have to say I was unavailable. I would also naturally do the same thing if the situations were reversed. I honored that agreement the entire time I worked for them, and it wasn't a problem for over a year. Then one day, I get told by the hotel that I have to work an upcoming weekend. I said I couldn't accept the shift because I already got booked one at my second place of work. My hotel boss said,
"Well, this is a huge conflict. We have a massive wedding taking place on the same weekend as a large conference, and we need all hands on deck."
I reminded them, once again, that I couldn't accept a shift if it conflicted with one I had previously booked. Boss got real annoyed and pushy and tried the,
"We have to be able to rely on you"
bullshit spiel. I reminded him that they could rely on me, doing exactly what I promised in my interview, and that they have been able to rely on me for over a year. I pointed out that it's not reasonable to demand that I work a shift that I hadn't agreed to work. Boss was still pissy when he hung up. They don't fire me, but over the next month, I couldn't help but notice I never got any shift offers. It became obvious I was being fired, but without actually being told I was fired. I called several times and asked if there were any shifts, but was always told,
"We have nothing for you at this time,"
in a cold tone. I checked with my friends who worked at the hotel, and they all said business was normal and they could see no reason why I wasn't being offered shifts. No worries, I just picked up more shifts at the post office, and they paid almost twice as much, so cool by me. Another couple weeks go by, and my direct supervisor at the hotel called me to ask for my uniform vest back. I asked why, saying that I haven't been fired, so as far as I know, I still worked there. My boss just kept sidestepping my question and refused to answer, and refused to admit that I had been fired. He just kept saying,
"We need that uniform. You have to give it back."
I said no problem. He starts saying,
"You could drop it off anytime."
And I interrupted him to say, "No, I won't be dropping it off." He stopped for a moment, flustered, then said,
"But you have to. It's part of your employment contract."
"Yes, I know," I replied. "I read the contract. It merely states that I have to return the uniform when requested. It doesn't say I have to deliver it to you, so I won't. You can send someone to pick it up at a time that is convenient to me." The hotel was in a different city from my hometown, so it was about a half-hour to 45-minute drive to my place. My ex-boss tried to bully me, but funny how losing his ability to deny me work had shifted our power balance. He sputtered and stammered as he tried to figure out some way to goad or coerce me into driving the vest to him, but finally gave up. He said he'd send someone.
"Sometime, so be ready whenever that is."
And I told him no, that he'd have to contact me to prearrange a time that was convenient. I said I'd check my calendar and he could call me back in a couple days to make arrangements. Petty, I know, but hearing the exasperation and annoyance in his tone as we spoke was very, very enjoyable. he never did send anyone to pick up the vest, so I ended up using it as part of a Halloween costume. Zombie Hotel Porter. I find it crazy that OP had no issues for a year, then literally after that year, it was like magic, like their interview never even happened. They never even mentioned that they had a second job or anything like that. It just sounds like this boss would be a pain in the ass to work with regardless, and OP ended up catching a break. Crazy how they never got that vest back though, but OP just simply maliciously complied with that contract policy. Alright, that's enough maliciousness for the day. Well, that wraps up this episode of Malicious Compliance. If you liked the video, please drop a like, share my content on all of your social media, subscribe if you haven't already, and make sure to hit that bell so you're notified every time I upload, and drop a comment down below. It really helps with the algorithm and helps new people find my channel. Thanks for watching, thanks to my patrons and super thanks contributors. Have a great day and stay safe out there.